Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of the Money Pros. I'm Oliver Tutt, certified financial planner practitioner, and I'll be your host for the next half hour as we talk about all the issues related to your money. How to make it, how to keep it, and hopefully how to help it grow. I've got a lot to get to on today's show, so let me tell you about what we have in store. First up, we're going to be talking about student loan debt, and this is a topic that comes up a lot on the Money Pros, but we're going to be focusing in on how potentially is impacting employer benefits and specifically how it might be impacting people's ability to save for retirement. So that's going to be in the first segment, and then in keeping with our theme about the impact of student loans, we're going to be talking to a special guest, Jill Butler. She's the director of the Wavemaker Fellowship at Rhode Island Commerce Corporation. She is also a classmate of mine at Leadership Rhode Island. She's part of the greatest class ever, the Xi2s. So we're happy to have her here. We're going to be talking about the Wavemaker Fellowship, which is an opportunity for Rhode Island college graduates to get a little help paying back some of those student loans. In our third segment, we're going to be talking about cash or credit. Which one should you be using? There's advantages and disadvantages to each one of them. We're going to go through them because it's a common question that comes up. And then finally, we're going to give you an opportunity to ask us a question here on the Money Pros. So that's everything we've got to get to. Let's jump right into it. Interesting article actually that I saw in Forbes magazine. It talked about not just we've talked about student loan debt being at an all-time high nationwide of over $1.3 trillion, $1.4 trillion, depending on what statistics you're looking at. But we want to talk more about how it may be impacting other aspects of people's financial lives. There's issues about housing affordability and student loans impacting people's ability to pay for housing, to do a variety of other things that would be traditional parts of a financial plan. And one of those things is saving for retirement. And increasingly, there's evidence that it's impacting student loan balances are impacting people's ability to save for retirement. So there was some research done by the Employee Benefits Research Institute, and some of that research indicated, for example, 2001, 12% of families had student loan debt. But by the time 2016 rolled around, that figure had jumped to 26%. So the idea that people have student loans is becoming more and more common. For families under 35, that figure of the percentage of families that have student loan debt jumps to 50%. So it's becoming a more and more common aspect of people's financial lives. So let's take a look at how it's actually impacting retirement savings, and we'll just throw up a slide so we can digest this a little bit. And what we're looking at here is 401k balances versus student loans. And over on the left-hand side, we see household ages. So for household ages between 45 and 54, for those, excuse me, households with with student loans in the household, the average 401k balance is $46,000. But if you move over to the right, the average 401k balance for those households without student loans is nearly double that at $80,000. Now, if we shift to that generation under 35 where student loans is becoming even more common, the average balance for those households with student loans only $8,000 versus those same households without student loans $11,000. So the initial data, and people are just beginning to look at this, is suggesting that the presence of student loans is absolutely having an impact on people's ability to save for retirement. We know, we've talked about on the show before, the longer you wait to start saving, the more difficult it becomes to accumulate enough to actually have retirement assets. But this phenomena is also giving life to a new trend in employee benefits of employers attempting to help their hires with paying back student loans. And some examples of that, for example, a fintech firm called Gratify that works with over 350 employers to design programs to help their employees pay back student loans. Another example, Fidelity Investments offers a benefit to certain of their employees to give them up to $2,000 a year to assist them with paying back student loans. They've had over 8,400 employees participate in that program. And interestingly enough, while these benefits, if they are provided by your employer, are actually taxable, there is legislation before Congress to attempt to reduce or eliminate the taxation of these student loan payback programs, at least up to certain limits. So we are seeing some trends, not only in terms of employee benefits, but also how it's impacting people's ability to save for retirement. It's going to be worth continuing to follow. In keeping with our theme, we're going to be talking to Jill Butler from the Rhode Island Commerce Corporation about the Wavemaker program and exactly what it means for Rhode Island graduates helping to pay back their student loans. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Money Pros. I'm joined by a very special guest now, Jill Butler, who's the director of the Wavemaker Fellowship at Rhode Island Commerce Corporation. As I mentioned at the head of the show, my classmate at Leadership Rhode Island. Very proud to have you here.
Zai2.
Zai2's GOATs, greatest of all time, right? So shout out to our Zai2 classmates who may or may not be watching, I don't know. Anyway, let's jump into the topic at hand. So you're the director of the Wavemaker Fellowship, and before we start to talk about that, which is really the focus of this segment, for those people that might not be familiar with who or what Rhode Island Commerce Corporation is, can you tell us who they are? Because I actually think this is one of the questions I asked you when I first met you, because I didn't recognize the name.
Yeah, so very simply, the Rhode Island Commerce Corporation is the state's economic development agency. Our job is to help businesses start, grow, and succeed in Rhode Island, and we have programs that offer business assistance, access to funding, we help with red tape reduction. I mean, if we're talking headlines, some of the bigger things, some of the bigger projects we've done lately include the jobs announcement of about 1,300 jobs coming to Quonset at Electric Boat, or relocating Virgin Pulse's headquarters to Providence. We also have a lot of partnerships with organizations throughout the state that help businesses create business plans, have access to training, workforce development, all sorts of stuff. So if you have a question about anything to do with business, the Commerce Corporation is your first stop.
So Commerce Corporation is a great resource, but I think that one of the things you just pointed out is this is, we're going to be talking about the Wavemaker Fellowship. I've talked about in the lead into this segment that an aspect of the Wavemaker Fellowship is assistance with paying back student loans, that the state of Rhode Island sees this issue as an economic development issue. It's not just a social issue or what have you. It is an economic development issue.
Yeah, I mean, talent is huge. You can't have a successful business if you don't have the successful pipeline of talent feeding into those businesses, and nowadays everything is evolving at such a fast rate that we want to keep the best and the brightest here so that we can sustain that growth for all businesses of all kinds into the future. So
we have you here to talk about a particular program that you head up at Rhode Island Commerce, and that is the Wavemaker Fellowship. What is the Wavemaker Fellowship?
Yeah, so it's actually a first-of-its-kind program that provides an incentive for young professionals to stay here in the state of Rhode Island working in STEM and design fields by offering money to help them pay back their student loans. So when I say STEM, I mean science, tech, engineering, and math, and design. If you are a person working in any of those fields for a company in Rhode Island, you're eligible to receive up to $6,000 per year back for you to help pay down your student loans or otherwise invest in the state. So if you're a graduate, you have to have a degree. If you have an associate's degree, you can earn up to $1,000 back. If you have a bachelor's degree, you can earn up to $4,000 back. And if you have a master's degree or higher, you can earn up to $6,000 back per year for up to 4 years to help you pay down the cost of your student loans. Obviously, the money is the focal point for a lot of young people here in Rhode Island, but in addition to the money, the Wavemaker Fellowship Program also offers a calendar of programming available to these people to help them deepen their roots in Rhode Island even more. So we're offering personal and professional development seminars, home buying workshops, financial well-being workshops, to try to help these people really dig their heels in and stay here in Rhode Island and flourish in the career that they've chosen.
So you said that it's a first-of-its-kind program. Why was it created? I mean, what need was perceived? What are the objectives of the program? Why do we want it?
Yeah, so in 2015, Governor Raimondo noticed that there was something happening in the space between higher education and industry here in Rhode Island. First and foremost, our world-class colleges and universities are graduating hundreds of people each year, and they're making the really tough decision of where do I start my career, or where do I even start my business? And unfortunately, they weren't choosing Rhode Island at the rate that we would have liked. Those same graduates, as we were talking about student loan debt earlier, are saddled with, on average, coming out of Rhode Island institutions, $33,000 in student loan debt each. which is a huge number for a young professional trying to figure out how to be an adult, how to afford to move out of their parents' house, how to afford to make their student loan payments and their rent payments and pay for food and pay for transportation. So it's a huge burden on their shoulders. And then the third thing that was happening at that time was that our industry partners, our businesses, were saying, hey, we need more talent. We need more people that have these skills. We can't find the people here in Rhode Island. And when you're at that point, you're wondering if businesses are going to leave because they don't have the right people. So in reaction to those things that were all happening, the Wavemaker Fellowship was introduced as a way to try to combat that.
So, like we said, it's an economic development issue, and you used a phrase that I think is important, which is a brain drain. We have great world-class institutions here where people are receiving their training, but they don't always perceive that staying in Rhode Island
Right.
is their best economic opportunity. And because they're faced with this debt, they really do have to go and seek the best economic opportunities. It can't just be about quality
Right.
of life and great beaches and things like that. You talked about this a little bit earlier, but maybe let's step through it a little more carefully. Who exactly is eligible? So talk to me about what students are eligible, where they have to live, and what degree programs are eligible, because it's not everything, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the focus of the program was really around the STEM and design industries, because it was determined that these are the industries that are really going to propel Rhode Island forward at the rate that we need. So to be eligible, you need to have a degree from any institution. It does not need to be a Rhode Island institution. It can be an institution outside of Rhode Island. You need to be paying your student loan debt. You have to have debt that you're actively repaying back. You need to be working in a STEM or design field. So that is, again, science, technology, engineering, math. That's engineers, software developers, architects, accountants, healthcare professionals, anything in the science and tech, engineering, math, plus design as the creative capital.
So as much as we like writers, poets, artists, and everything, that's not this program,
Not
right?
everyone gets a participation award.
Understood, understood.
No.
Is it only for recent college graduates? What if somebody graduated 8 or 10 years ago and is still eating college loan payments?
Yes. Well, the unfortunate reality is that you're going to be paying your student loans. Those of us who have student loans are probably going to be paying them off for 10, 15, even 20 years at this point. So no, it is not just for recent graduates. It was designed with recent graduates in mind, simply because they are the highest flight risk. They're the ones that are going to up and leave as soon as they don't get the salary they want for their first job or don't find the opportunity that they want. So it was designed with them in mind, but unfortunately / fortunately, depending on how you look at it, anyone with student loan debt that's working in a STEM or design field and that's employed at a company in Rhode Island is eligible to apply.
So if based on what I've just heard, if I'm watching the show today and I say, hey, this is something that may work for me, how does one go about applying for this program?
You go to wavemaker.commerceri.com.
There's a website, imagine
There's
that.
a website. So we actually are accepting applications for the 2018 cohort now through
There's a deadline
June
coming up,
15th.
so okay,
June
so
15th.
you may be watching this
Yes.
right around the deadline,
Yeah,
so it's
couple
coming
weeks.
up quick.
Get your applications in. In addition to basic information, I also need a academic transcript, a resume, an endorsement form from your employer that just tells me a little bit about what you do, and then your loan documentation, and then the selection process ensues.
And one of the things that I thought was interesting in reading the website about the program is how the fellows are selected. You know, Rhode Island's got a bit of a reputation as it's a who-you-know kind of place.
Yes.
It's a small state. We're all connected by a couple of degrees of separation. What's the process for selecting?
Yeah. So we have a selection committee that reviews all applications on a person and employer blind basis. So there's no favoritism there. And it's pretty black and white, to be honest. The legislation dictates kind of what we're looking for the Wavemaker Fellows. If you're working in a field that has been deemed critical to Rhode Island's advanced economy, then that's a plus for you. So that includes fields like biomedical innovation, IT, cyber, data analytics, defense, advanced business services. If you're working in a field like that, that's a good thing.
Things that Rhode Island has identified as opportunities
Correct.
that we can capitalize on.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
If you are if you have demonstrated academic and career achievements, if this award will play a substantial role in keeping you here, if you've had out-of-state offers or you're considering an out-of-state offer at the moment, that will help you get prioritized. And if this is seen as a last dollar assistance for your loan, so if you're on an income-driven repayment plan, or if you've refinanced or consolidated your loans in an effort to manage,
done everything you can.
Yeah, so this is going to be that extra thing that helps you kind of be a successful and economically contributing member. Those are the kinds of things that we prioritize in the fellows. And again, it's employer and person blind. So.
And we've focused on the student loan payback aspect of it, which depends on, what you said, master's degree level versus bachelor's degree level and things like that. But you also briefly talked about some other benefits. So we've got about 50 seconds left. What are the other, because it's not just about the money, you design a program around these folks, right?
Yeah, so we really, as an individual, to get free money back from the state on an annual basis is a great thing. Whether you pay down your loans, use that for a down payment, or just increase your spending power within the state, that's an awesome thing. But the intangible benefits are really designed to force collisions, to say, hey, this person who grew up in Lincoln and this person who grew up in Westerly are going to meet at a social networking event. They're going to talk about a really cool idea, and who knows, it may be the next startup. We're also helping them learn about the resources that are available to them through Rhode Island Housing or through local banks to help them manage their money or invest smarter. So we're helping them get connected to the community, and employers see it as a benefit too, because it's free for them to offer.
You know what, Jill? It's a great program, and a program that I didn't know anything about until I met you. And so thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about it. It's great to have you. All right, up next, we're going to be talking about cash versus credit, when you should use which. Stay with us. There's more to come. Welcome back to the Money Pros. I want to talk a little bit about cash versus credit and the question of which you should use when. This is a question that comes up a lot of times when I talk to clients, and people always have these predetermined notions about sort of which one's better, and that I'm going to assume that one is better than the other. And honestly, sometimes it's appropriate to use cash, and other times it's appropriate to use credit. Now, we're not talking about using credit to the extent of borrowing a lot of money. We're just simply talking about it as a payment device. So if you use green dollars and hard coins, I consider that paying cash. If you use a credit card but you pay it off at the end of the month, I consider that credit. We're just talking about how we use it in payment. And one would think with the increasing commonality not only of credit cards, which have been around for a long time, but mobile pay apps and electronic wallets like Apple Pay and things like that, and currency, sharing applications like Venmo, that the use of actual cash would be becoming less and less common, and it's really not the case. People are using cash as much as ever. In fact, according to the Global Cash Index, 24% of Americans use cash for day-to-day purchases, specifically currency, coins and paper money. $2.3 trillion in cash purchases occurred in 2015, which is the last year that I could find figures for. 2/3 of people prefer cash for purchases under $10, and I would count myself among those. And it's more common, and this may be a little counterintuitive, in fact, that using cash is more common for 18 to 21-year-olds versus older generations. And that may have something to do with younger people having less access to credit cards and things like that. But it's definitely more common to use cash with younger people. So let's talk about some of the pluses and minuses for cash, because there are certainly some times where cash makes a lot of sense and other times where it doesn't. So let's talk about the cash advantages first up. One of the most obvious ones is it's accepted everywhere. I don't think I've ever had a situation where somebody turned down money in the form of paper currency or coins. Maybe they don't want to receive, 1,700 rolls of quarters for the purchase of a new car or something like that. But certainly currency is pretty common and pretty widely accepted. Next, great for tips and gifts. I know several people that will have significant amounts of cash on them because they feel like, as they tip and do things like that, particularly when they travel, they want to have that available. So there's no question about that. And my kids will tell you they definitely want cash. And then the last one is cash is actually easier for budgeting, is one of the things you'll find. So The thing about cash is when it's gone, you can't spend any more money. So I know a lot of people that budget their monthly expenses by simply taking cash and putting it in a variety of different envelopes and say, all right, this is the cash I have for going out to dinner, this is the cash I have for travel, this is the cash I have for groceries, and that's how they budget it, and when it's gone, it's gone. So cash is actually easier to budget with, particularly if you have a problem controlling your expenditures. So that's something to keep in mind. But cash isn't always the perfect solution, so let's talk about some of the cash disadvantages. And the first one is fairly apparent, and that's the risk of loss or theft. So obviously if you're carrying around a lot of money, it disappears, you're not going to have much of an opportunity to get it back because it is so readily transferable from one person to the other. But the other aspect of that is it doesn't provide buyer protections that a lot of credit cards do. So you buy something from a party on Craigslist, or it's a fraudulent purchase or something like that, you may have more opportunity to recover from a credit card than certainly you would if you did it with cash. Next, no reward points. I actually just got a new credit card and I spent better part of a day researching rewards points programs, and they've become increasingly more generous, whether it is you are looking for travel benefits, cash back benefits, shopping benefits, any number of things. And finally, the other disadvantage is it's a challenge with respect to tracking expenses. Credit cards are great for tracking expenses because you have a record at the end of the year with respect to exactly how much money you spent and where you spent it. So if you're tracking expenses, which I encourage you to do, credit cards are easier. So some of my thoughts on the differences between cash and credit, when to use each one. Hopefully that's helpful. Stay with us. Up next, we'll give you an opportunity to ask us a question here on the Money Pros. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Money Pros. If you've got a question for us or a topic idea, we encourage you to reach out and contact us. There are a few different ways you can get a hold of us. You can